What's up YouTube, Brian here, back again with another video. Today we are doing some reel maintenance. I know it's not the most exciting topic in the world, but I know it is something that people are interested in because a lot of people think that maintaining and lubricating their reels is a complicated process, and let me tell you, with bait casters specifically, it's very easy. I know a lot of people like to send their reels out for maintenance. They'll maybe pay 15, 20 bucks to have a reel technician or someone who does this for fun or on the side go and clean and lubricate their and grease their reels. But in my opinion, if you got a bunch of reels, you can save yourself a tremendous amount of money by doing it yourself. So today we are looking at this Daiwa Tatula SV. I want to pick a reel that is very common, that a lot of people own and operate. I'm going to do maybe another one of these fairly soon with a Shimano reel because I know most people do these with Daiwas, but we'll dive into a Shimano reel in the next video. So with Daiwas, it's pretty simple. What we're going to be using today is some oil. I have some nano oil, some 10 weight. You can use any, the Lucas oil is good. The Shimano oil that comes with your reels is good. There's a lot of different reel oil options out there. I just use this nano oil because it's good, and it's the same oil that I use when I'm doing like knives and stuff. You need a very good flathead. This is a Wura. I'm going to show you the part number. I'm going to leave links in the description for the tools that you're going to need, but here's what you got for the Wura. You're going to need a good flathead for Daiwa reels. A pick tool will come in handy if you need to get some of the bearings out to do some flushes or maybe bearing replacements. I'm not going to be doing the bearings anyway today, but for future reference, you'll need a pick tool. I like to have an old toothbrush to clean out the worm gear. This comes in handy. You're going to need a whole bunch of Q-tips. You're gonna probably want a coin or a quarter, and that's just to get that's just a trick to get the side plate screw off. You're gonna need a 10mm socket to get the handle off. I use this tool from Roro. It's totally specialized and complete overkill. I just think it looks cool, and I like this around rather than using a socket wrench, but you can use a socket wrench. You're gonna need some grease. This is the Daiwa Space Age grease. This stuff is great because it's got the applicator built in. If you don't have the Space Age grease, you can use just your typical Yamalube. Where did I put that? I had it here somewhere. One second. This stuff. If you have marine grease, like just regular Yamalube marine grease, you can use this instead of, like Daiwa Space Age. This works great. The only problem is you're going to have to like squirt it onto a plate or something and use something to apply the grease onto the reel, like a toothpick, or you can take a Q-tip and snap the end off and then just use the stick. But anyway, this is a little more messy and a little more manual, whereas this is easy. Then the last thing you're going to need is some kind of degreaser. I like this Ardent stuff. I've been using this for years. I got so many cans of this, and it goes a long way, but any kind of degreaser is going to work. Okay, so to start the process off, you're going to want to, first things first is I usually take off the side plate and take the spool out, so then I can spray down the reel with the degreaser. So first things first is we're going to use a quarter. You can use a quarter, you can use a flathead, you can kind of use anything you want to get that side plate off. So we're going to pop this first screw out. Remove the Daiwa side plate. I usually throw a piece of black electrical tape on the line to keep it in place. This has got, this is a 6-speed ratio. This has got some 12-pound Seagar Invisics on there that I want to keep intact. So let's see if I can get this out. I have a lot of line in this spool, and plus the tape, it might make it a pain in the butt to get out. I'm already foreseeing this being a problem, so I might have to take the tape off, unfortunately. I'm going to re-spool this thing anyways with some Tatsu at some point. So I'm going to throw that tape back on there, just because on spools is a nightmare. Okay, so here's the spool. There's not any maintenance you really need to do on the spool for Daiwa because there is no spool shaft bearing, unlike say a Lew's reel or some of the other Daiwa reels. But anyway, so the Daiwa Tatula, there is no bearing on the spool. Don't really need to do anything with it. There's nothing to lube here. If you want, you can take a Q-tip and kind of just clean out the brake, although you find that it's never really that dirty. So nothing really to do on the spool. You can just kind of put it off to the side. The side plate, however, you're going to want to maybe take a Q-tip, kind of just clean this out a little bit. you probably won't find much, but you do want to put a drop of oil into the bearing. This bearing is not stock. I upgraded this with some ceramics. This is a Boca bearing on this particular reel. I wanted to try out Bocas, so I'm just going to only put 1 drop of oil in here. That's all you need. So if you have your stock bearing in here, hit it with like 1 drop. That's all you need to do. All right, so now that this is open, I'm not gonna do a full clean on this because it'll take forever. But usually I hit it with like, I shoot it around with some degreaser. Then I give it a wipe down with a towel. Wipe the whole thing down, and then I really get into all the nooks and crannies with the Q-tip. So I will get inside. This reel isn't super dirty because I cleaned it last year, and then I only have like 1 season of use on this reel, and this is a cranking reel, so I'm not really getting this thing too dirty, I'm not like flipping grass or anything with this. But anyway, you're gonna just get into all the little nooks and crannies with the Q-tip. Pop that down, clean out the T-wing, all those fun things. Kind of getting all the little nooks and crevices until you feel like you got it. Like, already picking up some dirt. You can be as OCD and anal about how much you clean the frame. It's completely up to you. Now, the thing is with the worm drive. Now, the worm drive, you're going to put grease. You're going to want to put new grease on your worm drive. But the thing is, if you use your there's the old grease on the worm drive. If you use your Q-tip on the worm drive, you can get little fuzzies in there. And that's why I have the toothpick. So I get, or the toothbrush. So I get the toothbrush in there. I kind of just grind in there, clean out all that old grease from the worm drive. You know what I mean? So some of that grease gets kind of clumped up in there, and you get some grass, and you get some dirt and some lint. So anyway, use this to clean out the worm drive. Lots and lots of Q-tips to clean out the body. Use the degreaser. All right. So anyway, once you've gotten the body pretty much cleaned up, and you're ready to start opening up the side plate. With the Daiwa Tatula, there is, move these off the side. There is a screw here this is a cosmetic cap over the handle nut. Then there's 3 flatheads on the outside of the body, and that's it. That's all you got to do. There's no screws on the other side that you need to take off. So first things first, we're going to take off the cosmetic screw. This is a little teeny tiny screw. It's very easy to lose. So be careful with this little guy. So I usually just take this off, put it off to the side. So if you're ever wondering like what your order of operation is for how to reassemble your handle, in my opinion, the best thing to do is just lay it out in the order in which you took it off. So I'll put the side cap over here, side cap, or cosmetic cap. Then we're going to pop this guy off. This is always a 10mm socket. Wrong way. And once you got it going, you should be able to just twist it off. All right, so we got our there, and the nut. Now the handle should there's a spring that's holding on the star drag, so just kind of push down on it and then lift your handle. There's always going to be a washer on the inside part of the handle. You can just leave that stuck on there, no big deal. Now your star drag is always going to pop off, spring loaded. Nothing really to do in the star drag. You can run a Q-tip under there if you'd like. It's not super important. All right, now here's your tension spring. This is what pushes the star drag up. You can just pop that off, put that off to the side. Now this nut right here is what the spring sits in. So you're just going to turn this all the way up. Now, sometimes getting these off can be a little tricky. If the threading on, like especially with the cheaper reels like a Daiwa Tatula SV, and even cheaper reels, sometimes the threading on this part of the shaft is a little rough. So sometimes getting this off can fight you a little bit, but just power through it and get the nut off. If it's a little stiff or tight, that's just low quality threads on mass-produced reels. What are you gonna do? All right, so that guy's gonna come off. There's usually a washer stuck to the bottom of it, like you see here. So, whoa. So anyway, the spring seat is always up, and a washer underneath. So we'll just put that off to the side. The next part is, this is the clicker plate. this is the plate that makes the noise when you turn the star drag, click, 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 click. That's what this little nub is right here. And then there's always 2 washers on the inside of it. And those washers are interesting because you want them, they have like an orientation. I don't want it's stuck in there. But anyway, be aware that there's 2 washers and their orientation matters. They need to be, they're both bowed. Let me see if I can get that out of there. There's a little oil in there, so it's not behaving. Okay. So these washers should always be like when you sandwich them together, there should be a gap. So that's how you want those together. So they should be opposite of each other and to make that little gap. And then once that gap is like that, just drop it into the kicker or the little kicker plate, tab plate. I don't know what the hell I call this thing. Remember, I'm not a real technician. I don't know all the official names for these parts. I just kind of call them by what they do. So anyway, so that's it. Now, right here is the main shaft. Like there's a bearing right here, and then there's the anti-reverse. So this bearing, there's usually another washer, and you can see that that's right in there. So we'll take that off too. There's one more washer. This is a little guy, and that we'll put that right there. Anyway, if you hit this on the table, the bearing should come out. It's not really held in there by anything, but anyway, so this is a bearing you're going to want to clean off and put some oil on. If this bearing is noisy, you can do what's called a bearing flush. Any of the bearings in here, you can do this. You take this and you soak it in some alcohol for like a day, for 24 hours or whatever, to break down all the grease and oil. So you're going to soak it in some alcohol, take it out, dry it off, and then throw a little oil in it. So if you have a very noisy reel and greasing the reel doesn't fix the noise, and that noise is on a cast, right? So you cast, it makes a lot of noise. You might need to either replace or replace or flush your bearings. So this is just the main bearing for the shaft. Put it out to the side. Now we can take the 3 screws. This reel honestly isn't that dirty. It's just the dirtiest Tatula that I have. So that's why I'm taking it apart. I'm going to show you guys on what kind of a basic Tatula maintenance looks like. These things, the first time you take these off, I've taken these off before, but the first time you take them off, there's probably going to be a little Loctite. And so getting them to break loose is going to be a little bit of a, you're going to have to put a little force into it. So if they don't come out really easily the first time, that's why. You're going to have a little Loctite usually. Okay, so now that all those are off, this plate should just kind of lift up. I'm going to keep these screws over here. There's that one. There's that one. So as you lift this up, this is where the magic is. All right, so we'll look at the side plate first. Okay, so in here, this is your anti-reverse clutch right here. You don't need to do anything to this. You can take a Q-tip and just kind of clean it off a little bit, but you do not need to re-grease. You want your anti-reverse to be dry. So just leave that the way it is. Under here is a bearing. This is your zero adjust knob. The bearing is under here. Now, when you're doing a bearing upgrade, this is the other bearing you're going to want to change out. So you're going to want to change out the one on the side plate, and then you change out the one here. I have Bocas in both of these, so I'm actually not going to take this bearing out. I know it's pretty fresh and clean, but popping this little star thing in here is actually really easy. So essentially, pop that out. You can replace the bearing or take that one out and flush it, or just drop a little bit of oil on it. So anyway, so there's a little bearing in there. That's your anti-reverse. All right, so we're not going to do anything to the side plate. It's fine. All right, in here, this is a little sleeve that has to drop into these teeth. So this is what the anti-reverse touches. So if you notice when you take this out, there is a little bit, there's teeth, and that has to drop into this plate right here. So we're going to take this off. We don't need this at the moment. Here's your main gear. Here's your, I'm going to just point, okay. So your main gear, your brake is under here. Here's your pinion. And then this is called the yoke. These are yoke posts. And then here's like this collar that the pinion sits in. Here's your thumb bar assembly right here. And that's pretty much all I need to know. And then there's another gear underneath here that drives the worm. So the worm gear that makes your T-wing go back and forth. That's down here, and that's plastic. So when we're greasing, what we're going to be greasing some contact points. We're going to be greasing the thumb bar. We're going to be greasing where this thing right here slides back and forth. We'll grease this spring. We're going to re-grease the pinion. We're going to re-grease the main gear, and then we're going to grease the worm drive underneath. So to start that process, we're going to kind of disassemble it a little more. And this part's really easy. I know it looks scary if you've never done it before, but you literally just lift this thing up. All of these on every reel is going to be kind of the same. So like I said, these teeth sometimes fight you a little bit. So pick that plate up. Under here is your carbon drag and your main gear. So what's fun is there should be one more thing underneath. Yep, so this plate. So anyway, this is your main drag. Now, some guys like to upgrade this drag. This is the stock one on this particular reel. For maintenance on this thing, you're going to want to clean it. So you should take a rag, just kind of clean it real quick. And then I always re-grease this thing. So some people like to run this drag completely dry. If you're flipping and you want to lock down your reel and you want to have no drag, like say you want to have zero drag, like you're frogging or flipping heavy and you don't want any pull, you just want straight winch, you can leave this thing dry. However, that will reduce the life of the drag, the drag. So, but the thing is, I always grease it. So, you know, most people grease it. That's the proper thing to do. It'll give it a lot more life. So the way I grease the drag is I usually just put some grease in my fingers, like this, kind of rub it, and then I just go like this. I don't know if this is the right way to do it. This is the way I do it, but you don't need to put a lot of grease on your drag stack. Just a little grease is good. So we're gonna pop that rack into the main gear. Now underneath the main gear, there's this this thing. I don't even remember what this thing is called, but you can just kind of leave it the way it is. A little grease on it is perfectly fine. So that's going to be on the bottom, and that piece encounters this plate. So this plate is interesting. This is what the thumb bar, when you turn the handle, so when you push the thumb bar and you turn the handle, this is what re-engages the thumb bar. So it's a very important piece, but we're going to pop this out because we need to get to the gears under. So one thing I got to note on this is grooved. So if you see it's not a perfect circle. That means this needs to drop in and align perfectly. So I've reassembled reels before and everything isn't lining up, and it's because I didn't get this plate seated properly. So I had to take the whole reel back apart, wiggle this thing around, seat it, and then reassemble it, and then it's fine. So we're gonna put that there. Put that there. Anyway, so now we're gonna this is the worm gear. We're gonna grease the worm gear, but we're also gonna, this pinion is usually where all the nastiness happens. So what happens is when you use your reel a lot, the pinion, the grease will collect and get really nasty, like around the neck of the pinion. So when you're cleaning it, this is one of the areas that you really want to clean. So you can tell right now already. See this grease build up right here? Right there. Look at all this grease that's kind of building up. So that's what I'm talking about. The grease just naturally moves around on its own. It comes off of the gear and starts collecting in weird places, and that's one of the places it's collecting. So we're going to fix that. We're going to take the yoke springs off, and the collar and the pinion should just lift. Easy peasy. And you can just literally take the pinion, just put it down. But yeah, look at, so there's our collar. Got some grease buildup. You can take a Q-tip, clean that sucker out, or you can just take a rag, clean it out. Either or, whatever you want to do. Cool. So here's our pinion. And clean that thing off as well. Cool. So now what we're going to do is, while we have this apart, we're going to throw some grease onto the worm gear. So the way I do this, most people do it, is they kind of set it on the table and then they hit it with the grease and they spin it, right? So you don't want to put too much grease, but you also can put a little bit. So, you know, giving her a little grease is not a bad idea. Till everything kind of starts turning blue is what you want to go for. All right. So in my opinion, I see a little blue. That's good. So now we can put the collar back in. with the pinion. So the pinion is always, this is the part that goes down with the teeth there. So I'll put it on the collar. This is always fun. Might take a couple attempts. There we go. Okay, so that's in there. We can put our yoke springs back on if you want. I usually put these on right away because I always forget to put them on. All right, so now we're gonna hit some of these outside. You can actually put a little grease on the yoke springs. That's fine, since they do move. Any moving parts really is where you want to hit it with a little grease. So I'm gonna hit a little here, a little there. Sorry, quick pause there. Had to answer the door. Sorry. So anyway, we got our yoke springs back on. We've got our worm drive greased. Now we can put the plate back on that engages the thumb bar. So you want your teeth to go this way. But like I said before, we got to make sure that thing is seated properly. Because if it is not, this thing won't go back together. So it looks like that's okay. There's like a little dog hair or something in there. Get that out. All right. All right. So that's in there. We're spinning. We're good. Now we can put the main gear back on. So that plate underneath, that pad's going to be in there. We're going to drop that sucker down. It's going to start rubbing on the pinion and spinning that. We can put our, let's not forget our drag stack in there then, our drag washer back in there. And then this guy. Now this guy always gives me problems going back in because these teeth. All right. I think I'm good on that. Wait, did I put that in? I don't think there's really a direction these go. I know that it was in this way because of the, can see the drag residue, so we'll just put it back that way. But honestly, I don't think it matters which way it goes. Okay, so now we're gonna do the same thing to the main gear that we did on the worm drive gear, where we're gonna just put some grease on it and spin her around. Like I said, a little bit of grease goes a long way. Do not need to over grease it. That looks pretty good to me. The other places we're going to grease is we're going to grease the thumb bar. So I usually throw some grease around the screw because that's kind of where it goes up and down. Also, there's a contact point. There's a friction point right here. We're going to grease that a little bit. We already put some grease on the yoke springs. And then we'll put a little grease in there on the thumb bar. That's pretty much it. Good to go. That's pretty much all the greasing and cleaning that needs to be done. Like I said, if this thing was really dirty, I would have gone around and cleaned the whole thing with a Q-tip. I don't think this particular reel is that dirty, so I didn't do that, but we're just going to give her a re-grease. All right, so now we can put our anti-reverse collar back on. Remember to make sure it locks in to the teeth there. Make sure our yoke springs are back on. I've often put together the reel without the yoke spring, and I always forget. So just want to remind everybody. And then I think, yeah, that's pretty much it. Now we can put our side plate back on. This is the moment of truth. Let's see if you got everything lined up right. Should just kind of snap back in. And then the real moment of truth is when you put this, if you put this bearing back in and it sits flush, then you know you got everything lined up right. So that's correct. So if you put this thing back together and this bearing is not seated nicely in the holster, in the collar there, and it's sticking up a little bit, it's safe to assume you don't have something right inside, so you need to take it back off and reseat everything. All right, so now we're going to put a couple of our screws back in just to keep this handle together, or just to keep this side plate from moving around. This is a great thing to do during the winter up here in Minnesota, where we're not fishing too much unless you go out on the ice. Reel maintenance is great. Now, a question get a lot is, how often should you maintain your reel? I say open it up and grease it when it's a little rough or noisy. I mean, you kind of know your reels. If you feel a reel is getting a little less smooth than it used to be, or it's getting a little noisier than it used to be, that is the time, that is the reel telling you it's time to clean out the old grease, get rid of all the dirt, re-grease, and clean her up. And then you'll be surprised at how good your reel works and feels after a simple cleaning like this. Also, out of the box, Daiwa reels are known for being fairly dry from the factory. So if you order, say you go on one of your favorite websites and you order a brand new Tatula or whatever reel, and you get it and it's a little grindy and a little noisy, it's probably a little under lubricated from the Daiwa factory. So in that particular scenario, I would definitely pop these open and just throw a little grease on there. It's going to go a long way. It's going to make your experience using the reel much more enjoyable. Okay, so now we can reassemble the handle the way that we took it off. So we're going to start with that little teeny washer. Force that guy down on there. Now our little clicker noise plate with the two washers that need to be opposite of each other. Okay. Then we got our spring collar with that washer underneath. So I'll push that washer down. Threading this guy on can be a little fun on certain reels that might have shitty teeth on the main shaft. Might fight you a little bit to get it back on, but it will go on eventually. I mean, it came off, so it's got to go back on, right? So basically twist this down until you get to the end. All right, then you're going to put your spring back in. Now this is this is the fun part. So as you put your drag star back on, you want to get these thing lined up, and then there you go. So when you get the drag star, you got to kind of pivot it around until it gets into the teeth here, and then you should be able to push it down, and it should cover up. Like, you should not see any of the bearings and all that and all the metal under there. So if it drops in, you know you got it. And what I usually do is I usually push this down with 2 fingers, right? So I can get the handle on a lot easier. So this is the kind of the tricky part. You got to be a little ambidextrous. You got to push that handle down. Make sure that washer, here, I'll just take the washer off. Push this washer on. Then the handle. And now that the handle's on, I usually then pivot my hand and then I push the handle down so I can put the nut back on. Now this handle nut has to go on just perfect. This thing is always a pain in the butt sometimes. You gotta get that thread. It's got really fine thread. You gotta just get it just right. You'll know when you got it right. It'll go on smooth. If you don't have it on right, it will let you know. No, my fingers don't work like they used to. All right, see, now that goes on butter smooth. When it goes on butter smooth, you did it right. Okay. So we're going to tighten this sucker up. So now I usually don't tighten it too much because you're going to have to put this cosmetic plate on, and the cosmetic plate, that screw has to line up perfectly. So, oh, that looks like it's pretty good first shot, which is pretty cool. Usually you got to mess with it a little bit. All right, so you throw the cosmetic plate back on. Oops, I must not have this lined up right. So I think I need to go to the left a little bit. So you just want to get that cosmetic plate lined back up. There we go. Put that back on. We're going to put our spool back in. This might be a little tricky because I got maybe a little too much line on this sucker. See if it goes in nice. Sort of. Let's take that off. And then we're going to put our side plate back on. So it kind of drops in, slides up. There we go. And then we're going to twist down our screw with our coin trick. You don't have to use a coin, you can use your flathead. I just think the coin's old school, so that's why I do it. All right. So if you do everything right, this should go like this. You should have a lot of good movement. Feels good, feels clean. Also, I would then hit the worm gear with a little bit of grease. So kind of, because you already cleaned it out with your toothbrush. You don't need a lot of grease on the worm gear, but if you just, spread it around. All right, so that's pretty much it. Not a big deal. Don't need that many tools. Not all that dramatic. It's kind of a messy job. When you use this stuff, your wife or significant other or people you live with are not going to like the smell. My wife walks in the room. She's like, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, "I'm cleaning fishing reels." I mean, this degreaser smells pretty terrible, to be perfectly frank. But yeah, that's it. That's how you lubricate and maintain a Daiwa Tatula SV. It's pretty much the same across all Daiwa reels and even all Shimano reels. I have a Corrado K though that I think I'm going to do another video on pretty soon, just to give some love to the Shimano fanboys. But anyway, if you have any questions, comments, if you hate how I did it and you got suggestions on better ways that I can improve this process, please leave a comment in the description. And until the next video, happy maintaining your own equipment and saving a boatload of money and getting intimately familiar with your fishing equipment. So that's all I got for now. Hit like and subscribe. Thank you very much. See you later.